Welcome again, everyone, to another episode of Resilient Health Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Darin Ingels, and I'm so happy and privileged to have our guest today as someone who I've known of you for a long time. I don't think we've ever actually met in person, but obviously I've followed your work. I think you and I have very similar histories in dealing with Lyme disease. But Dr. Bill Rawls is a medical doctor. He is the author of Unlocking Lyme and the author of The Cellular Wellness Solution, his latest book, and also the founder of Vital Plan Supplements. So, Dr. Rawls, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Yeah, nice to be here.
For people who don't know, you had your own personal struggle with Lyme, as did I. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit about how you came into the Lyme world.
I think all of us that are really paying attention in this space have our own story. And mine is like many. It wasn't initiated necessarily by a tick bite. I had a lot of tick bites when I was growing up, and but my chosen field was obstetrics, delivering babies, which meant staying up at night to deliver babies, taking call in the hospital, which was every second to third night and every second to third weekend in my practice. And I was one of those people that if somebody was in labor or somebody was having problems in the hospital, I just didn't sleep, which meant most nights I didn't sleep for 20 years that I was on call. And I was able to just kind of push through it in my 30s. I thought, yeah, we don't really need that much sleep. I can just push through it. I'll do fine. But it started catching up with me in my 40s, and I was developed all kinds of health problems, not just was tired, but my whole body was breaking down. I started having neurological issues and heart issues and just horrible fatigue, joint issues. My whole body just started breaking down. And when I started looking for solutions in the conventional world, it was like, yeah, well, we'll check your thyroid. Well, that was a little off. Thyroid hormone didn't do anything, and started searching for all possibilities, including Lyme disease. The Lyme test was initially negative, um, and was forced to stop doing call, but just didn't get better. Even improving my health habits, working on my sleep, all of those things, my body just stayed in this state of misery and kept searching, ended up with a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. Finally found through a circuitous route that I was carrying some of these bacteria and thought, oh, Lyme disease, that's the answer. Get antibiotics, I'll be fine. And several courses of antibiotics made me just sicker instead of better. And I was in a position that I was still having to work, even though I wasn't taking call. So I didn't really have the option of seeing Lyme doctors or really the money to pursue that. So I just felt my intuition kept pushing me to say, you need to figure this out. Kept reading, researching, happened upon good information about the possibility of herbal therapy for as a solution. Really didn't have a lot of faith that it would work, but it was like, okay, this is safe. I can afford it. I'm going to give this a try, and really embraced it wholeheartedly, and started getting my health back. And just continue getting better, but that changed my life forever and put me on a pathway to really understanding, asking questions about what is chronic Lyme disease, what is chronic illness, why had these herbs had such a remarkable effect when nothing else did. And I've been on that pathway for almost 20 years now. And like living a normal life. And not suffering the long-term repercussions that so many people do. So it's a story to tell. It's a story that I've lived, and it's pretty much my life is trying to help people understand this thing.
Yeah, it's so complicated for people. And, at least in my practice, and I think a lot of us who are practitioners, I don't see a lot of cases of acute Lyme disease. If people get truly acute Lyme disease, they probably end up in the ER, or maybe they go to their primary care doctor. I see the people who've often been dealing with this for months to years. I kind of laugh. I'm actually one of the few patients who actually had true acute Lyme disease. I had the bullseye rash, I had the 105 fever, joint pain, fatigue, neuropathy, the whole gamut, and I found it within a few days. And I treated it right away. And I started right away on doxycycline, and within 4 or 5 days of treatment, I felt perfectly fine. But I got bit 2 weeks before I opened my own business in Connecticut. And starting a new business, new practice was very stressful. Again, working long hours and not sleeping and taking care of myself. I think it really was the perfect storm. And I see that with so many people with, chronic Lyme. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. It's not just the exposure to the bug that's the problem. There's all these other underlying factors that allows that bug to create the damage that it does.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important to recognize. I mean, I've interviewed literally thousands of people who identified with chronic Lyme disease, and 95% of them do not remember becoming ill around a tick bite. And those that do, I have to wonder, was it just Borrelia in your case? The ticks carry so many different pathogens, and what is it, just the wrong load of pathogens? Or some people, it's they get a big load of pathogens. They get like 100 tick bites at one time, and but I think that what that tells you, that most people don't become acutely ill. I've come to define the Lyme microbes, not just Borrelia, all of them, as more like accomplices than actual culprits.
Right.
And their whole strategy is bypassing the immune system and infiltrating the cells throughout our body. And we're finding that this is really common with a lot of different microbes, not just the tick-borne microbes. And this is happening throughout our life with chlamydias, mycoplasmas, viruses of many different kinds. And when they invade cells, all of these microbes have the potential to become dormant if cells are healthy. In other words, the environment there is hostile for micro growth. They can just go dormant and wait it out. And that's why antibiotics don't get it, and it's later when you have stress. When you are stressed, your cells are stressed, these things reactivate. And that, to me, is not only what chronic Lyme is, but really a fundamental model that we can start explaining all of chronic illness. Like somebody asked me about pandas the other day, and I went looking for just current research to see if I could find that thread, that same pathway. And we associate pandas with streptococcus. And I found a study that showed that streptococcus can invade cells and become dormant for weeks or months, and it can invade white blood cells and be carried through different tissues throughout the body, become dormant, and then intermittently reactivate. And it just says, yeah, that's what pandas is. Well, it's kind of the same thing that chronic Lyme is. So no matter what bacteria or virus or whatever I look at, all these low-grade pathogens have the same potential. So it's really interesting when you really get down into it.
Yeah, I think we saw this with COVID too, with the people we're now calling long COVID. I think everyone in the Lyme world kind of said, well, welcome to our world, right? I mean, this idea that you can have a post-infectious sequela of fatigue and brain fog and various neurological conditions. The Lyme community has been struggling with this for years and been hard to get, recognition from the government and getting good testing and treatment options. But I think it really shed this light that there's this idea that once you get exposure to a particular microbe, and again, it's probably not a microbe, it's probably the combination of your load over the course of time. And for a lot of
Yep.
people, COVID was that tipping point, certainly. But it's just the idea that these things have the ability, like I said, to hide, get inside cells, evade the immune system. In the case of Lyme specifically, it's a true shapeshifter. I mean, it can ball itself up in a little ball, and the immune
Yep.
system essentially ignores it. So we've got these really clever organisms that have figured out through, evolution biology to, stay alive. It's its job, right? It doesn't want to kill the host. It wants
Right.
to perpetuate and keep itself going, but in ways that ultimately, cause harm to us.
Yeah, I think that's it. And, long COVID has brought light to this, but interestingly, they're having frustrations in diagnosing long COVID because so many people don't test positive for long COVID, but they have these long-term symptoms. And I think that's partially because there's a shift in the immune system in this chronic situation, and you have reactivation of other microbes. It's not just COVID at that
Right.
point, and so many people say, well, I got COVID and now my Lyme symptoms have flared up again. Well, yeah, it's probably reactivation of Borrelia and mycoplasmas and a lot of other things. And I think that's the problem is they're looking for the microbe that's causing it, and it's not. It's I don't even refer to chronic Lyme disease or long COVID as infections. An infection is when that microbe, bacteria, virus, whatever, first enters the body. That's the new invasion of a brand new pathogen. So if we're in a chronic situation, those things have become ill-fitting residents of the body. So it's reactivation of those things that's going on. So it's a totally different animal as far as figuring out how to treat it properly.
Yeah, and we've got so much evidence now in the literature that these microbes are triggers for autoimmune disease. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in any kind of chronic situation like this, we certainly see it in other autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and MS. We know that Epstein-Barr virus, mycoplasma, like I said, chlamydia, all these different microbes can be a catalyst for some sort of autoimmune process. So this idea that we're just going to kill our way out of the problem, and what if it's something like strep that's part of you?
Right.
It's something you can
Exactly.
truly get rid of. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, you can suppress the load maybe temporarily with antibiotics. And we see this a lot with our PANS kids. They go on antibiotics, the neural inflammation goes down, they get a little better. And often within days to weeks of stopping the antibiotics, we start to see the symptoms ramp up as the organism starts to replicate again.
Yep.
So, how we start altering our immune system in a way that's gone dysfunctional, in response to these microbes, many of which are potentially part of our normal flora, I think that's a question we haven't completely figured out yet.
But yeah, I think herbs are the answer.
Yeah.
I can't think of a better answer, and the answer is already there. We need to get better and better at utilizing what nature already has. And when you look at autoimmunity, I don't think you can explain it without considering the microbe factor, but especially that reactivation of microbes. So if you can think about tissues in the body that are harboring cells that containing dormant microbes, and this is looking like this is much more a normal state for all living organisms, animals, plants, everything, than it is an abnormal state. That we all have cells that contain dormant microbes that can be reactivated. So if you can imagine, your cells, you're going through that stress, you've had that perfect storm, things are going on in your lifestyle, which is pretty much, disease doesn't just happen. But when cells are stressed, these microbes start reactivating. Well, at that point, the immune system is going, oh no, we're having an invasion here, and it starts attacking those cells. And it just provides just a perfect explanation for what autoimmunity is. And I even have a theory that that's pretty much going on at a low grade in everyone. I mean, if you look at a test for autoimmunity like ANA, antinuclear antibody, a normal level is not zero.
Right.
The normal level is a range, which means everybody has some autoimmunity going on all the time. And we've documented autoimmunity going on in Lyme disease and so many other chronic illnesses. But it's not up until it gets to a high level that we define it as, oh, now you have an autoimmune illness. And I've had a theory of why that is. Why did we set those? What set those numbers? And what I'm speculating is what set the numbers are, if you look at the therapies for autoimmune disease, they're really toxic. They can kill people.
Right.
So they actually, because the therapies are so toxic, they set the definition of autoimmune illness quite high. So it's an arbitrary definition, but everybody has it to a certain extent.
Well, you mentioned herbs, and you and I both found wellness through herbs. I guess same thing. I was on oral antibiotics for 9 months prior to herbs, which is kind of funny. I mean, I'm a naturopathic doctor by training. You would think it would have been the other way around, but I was still fairly new in practice. I lived in Connecticut. It was just Lyme.
Sure.
It was named after Lyme, Connecticut. I lived about 30 minutes down the road from Lyme, so it made sense just to go on antibiotics. And again, the first time I went on antibiotics, I felt great. It worked well. But 8 months later, when I relapsed, went back on the same antibiotics, it did nothing. And I tried a different antibiotic, it did nothing. And then I started getting into all the combinations. And again, I felt worse and worse. I lost about 30 pounds over the course of 6, 7 months. It was because my gut was
Yeah.
a mess and I wasn't eating and I wasn't sleeping. And I just felt terrible. And again, I was fortunate to have found Dr. Zhang in New York City, who started me on Chinese herbs. And I think you started your path with Stephen Buhner's protocol.
Yeah. In the
But
beginning, I
you
did.
know,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that once I kind of got on board, and within a month, I felt 85% better. So
Right.
what is it about herbs that people need to understand that are so different than when you're just using antibiotics?
Right. Yeah. There is an explanation for that. And it really, it's pretty interesting when you think about it. I think when people think of an antibiotic, they think, an antibiotic being made, they think, well, there's some really smart scientists that are working in a lab somewhere to develop these chemicals that kill targeted bacteria. And it's just not the case at all. We're just not that good. So all antibiotics originally can be sourced from either a plant, a fungus, or a bacteria, every single one of them. So, but you look at that, so it's because all organisms, even bacteria, have to have defenses against other bacteria, viruses, and other kinds of microbes. So all organisms have defense systems. But so bacteria, plants, fungi are using a chemical defense system that's different from our immune system, but it's still just as effective. It's a very effective system that's basically a chemical warfare, but it's the sophisticated natural intelligence that's present in that organism. Well, we pluck one chemical out of that organism's system, the one that has the strongest antibiotic properties. And then we change the structure of it. We alter it chemically for two purposes: make it more potent if we can, but also get a patent on it.
Right.
So, what that suggests is we don't have the capability of producing that natural intelligence of that organism system. We're dumb. We can't do it. We have no capability of doing that. So we pluck this one chemical out, and it's pretty archaic when you really think about it. Now, there is a place for antibiotics. All antibiotics work by inhibiting bacterial growth. All antibiotics work by inhibiting bacterial growth. So that means the faster that pathogen is growing, the more effective the antibiotic is going to be. So you have somebody walk in with a pneumococcal pneumonia. Those pneumococcal bacteria are turning over. They're doubling their growth rate every 20 minutes. So that's really fast, and that's fast enough that somebody can get really sick really, really fast. And antibiotics, that's the right solution. They might be well in just a couple of days. Borrelia, in its normal state, has a doubling time of 12 to 24 hours. That's quite a bit different than that growth rate. I don't know how conventional doctors think that a conventional antibiotic like doxycycline is going to wipe all of those bacteria out, but they think so. But see, even so all of these pathogens that would come with ticks, they have a much slower growth rate. So you take that pathogen, let it invade cells, become dormant, and stay there a while, and then intermittently reactivate. That one shot strong antibiotic, it's not going to wipe them out. So you compare that with an herb. What you're getting from the herb is the plant's entire defense system against microorganisms. So it's not just bacteria, it's viruses, protozoa, yeast, suppresses parasites. So that plant is protecting its cells from all the pathogens in its area. But there is an intelligence about it that not only is it much more broad in spectrum, it doesn't affect normal flora. So problems with antibiotics is you disrupt normal flora in the gut really rapidly. You generate antibiotic resistant pathogens, and that can happen, both of those things can happen in as short as 10 days. And you're also having toxicity to cells and mitochondria. With herbs, you have that antimicrobial effect, but it is more broad spectrum and it doesn't disrupt normal flora in the gut or on the skin. In fact, I found that herbs balance the gut better than probiotics do. And you're actually protecting cells and mitochondria. You're reducing cellular stress. And that's the key right there. To win this war, you not only have to suppress the pathogens and suppress their activity, you're not going to get rid of them all. That's impossible, but suppress them while at the same time, you're restoring cellular integrity. Those two things are absolutely essential. And I don't know of anything on earth that can do that better than herbs,
Well,
truly.
yeah, I think the beauty of herbs too is that chemically, they're very complex and they contain a lot of different constituents. And that's where, again, I think this is where we have a little bit of a schism from, the research scientists that want to take that one active component out of a plant and again, potentize it. And we see even some of the supplement companies do this. But like I said, the wisdom of the whole plant, you may find in any one plant, it has antimicrobial effects, anti-inflammatory effects. It promotes better circulation. It boosts your immune system. It's demulcent to your gut. So, we can mix and match and really pick and choose, these particular herbs in combination that really help address sort of the totality of all these things that are affecting any one person. And I really like the idea of being able to individualize, treatment plans for people that really kind of meet them. Because some people with Lyme, it's more joint pain. For other people, it's more neuropathy. For other people, it's more, whatever. And so being able to kind of tailor that gives us a lot of flexibility as practitioners.
Yeah, I think it's really good. All of those effects, though, what they're rooted in is that herbs protect cells. That's one of their most important properties is they protect cells from a lot of different factors, carbohydrate overload, free radicals, toxic substances, natural toxins, radiation, microbes of every variety. So where I am at my point in just this journey is understanding that all aspects of all chronic illness are rooted in cellular stress. And it's because we're made of cells. So inflammation is excessive cellular die-off. Hormone imbalances are disruption of cells throughout the body, which disrupts cellular communications. It's all about cellular stress. So that key element of restoring someone's health is reducing cellular stress. And of all we all need to eat a better diet, get sleep, all of these stress factors we need to reduce. But as far as something to give you an edge on all of that, I just don't think there's anything better than herbs. And here, we're talking about there's a pretty broad spectrum of herbs, and different herbs have slightly different properties, but used in conjunction, the synergy that you get between different herbs, the effects can just be remarkable.
Yeah, I probably get at least one patient a week that asks me, "Well, are they better than antibiotics? Aren't they as strong? No, should I really be on an antibiotic because antibiotics work better?"
Yeah. The answer to that, I mean, I, we didn't have that proof, you know. Stephen Booner did so much good work, and there's been so much evidence that's accumulated over time. But there was a study done out of Johns Hopkins in 2020 that this was in vitro study, test tube study. So they wanted to see if the herbs actually did kill the bacteria, and did they do it as well as antibiotics. So they compared 12 different herbs that had been commonly used in Lyme disease, and they all had some effect against Borrelia. But interestingly, six of those herbs, I believe the list was cistus, cryptolepis, Japanese knotweed, cat's claw, and Chinese skullcap. There was one other one. They actually outperformed doxycycline in one of the cephalosporins for killing both the motile and the dormant cyst forms of the bacteria. But interestingly, a bunch of those researchers took some of those same herbs and did the same thing with Bartonella and Babesia. Bartonella is a different kind of bacteria. Babesia is a protozoa. They saw the same thing.
Yeah.
And what that tells you right there is, yeah, these herbs really do work. They really do kill these bacteria. They're designed for this, and so that's really been nice to have that information, and has allowed those of us who really believe in herbs to speak with some confidence that, yeah, this is the right solution. This isn't the alternative. This is the best solution.
Yeah, I know there's also a lot of questions about sourcing of herbs, safety of herbs. What are your thoughts on people who are concerned that, hey, look, I don't know where this plant's grown. What if it's got lead or mercury, or what if it comes from China?
Yeah, yeah. Well, unfortunately, absolutely everything that we put in our mouths, even organic food and everything else, has a little bit of lead and mercury and other kinds of things in it, just because our environment, our atmosphere is so laden with those things now. But you, of course, want the very, very lowest level, and we want to make sure that it's the right plant. And what's really essential is getting the high enough concentration of the chemistry of the plant to actually matter. So that's where I see people falling short most of the time, is they're buying products that really don't have the potency. They don't have the full representation of the phytochemicals or the concentration of the phytochemicals. So that's where a lot of products fall short. I think that's really important to use preparations that you're getting that full spectrum and the density of the phytochemicals. Second to that is finding companies that do testing to make sure it has the lowest possible level of contaminants. And again, zero isn't an option for anything anymore. It's like, and when you look at pollutants or things that are from petroleum, 99% of drugs now are made from chemicals that come from petroleum. So we're getting in a lot of different places. But you want the lowest level, and you get that by testing. So being the company being familiar with the source, our company, we actually do 3 levels of testing, getting a certificate of analysis from the supplier, and then taking a sample of that lot and actually having it tested by a separate lab, and then testing it again during the manufacturing process to make sure that the mixture is happened properly and the concentration is there. Not a lot of companies are doing that, but but they're out there. Your better companies they're going to put that on the website. It's going to be something you're going to know about.
Yeah, I usually tell people you get what you pay for. When you do this kind of
Sure.
quality assurance, quality control, it's expensive, and that's going to get passed on. I mean, there's a reason that someone like CVS or Walgreens sells a cheap, supplement of
Right.
whatever it is, because more than likely, they're looking for the cheapest price point. They're not
Yep.
necessarily looking for the highest quality, where, we're more concerned about the quality of the product as well as the efficacy. But again, any good company will provide you with an independent third-party analysis of their product. And again, they take those steps along the manufacturing process to ensure that, what's on the labels, actually what's in the bottle, that it's free of contaminants. And again, any good company's doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So I know it's like a 3-day dissertation on all the herbs that we could use for Lyme and infection, but maybe just give me, what do you think are like maybe the top three that anyone dealing with Lyme and co-infection should probably, consider?
Yeah. I've got a list of about 50 herbs that I've tried over time, and it became a thing of, being my own guinea pig to try various different herbs through my journey. But that foundation that I generally recommend, it started with the Bunner protocol, and then we have these supportive studies to suggest that these particular herbs, at least have been evaluated. That doesn't exclude a lot of other herbs out there. It's just that, we have these basic herbs: Japanese knotweed, Chinese skullcap, cat's claw. Andrographis was not top of the list, but it's still an excellent antiviral. Um, so those are some of the top antimicrobial herbs. I tend to pair them with adaptogens like reishi, cordyceps, and other immune modulating herbs, because so much of this is it's balancing the immune system function also, that I think is really important. And gaining that extra level of cellular protection, I think, is really important also.
Yeah, well, I'll add to my list. I love cat's claw. I use a lot of it. I'm a big fan of Artemisia. Works great against Babesia. I use a lot of, Banderol, Kumanda. Again, there's some really great herbs. And like I said, the beauty of it, if you find something that for whatever reason it's not agreeing with you, doesn't seem to be giving you the results you want, we've got this flexibility of using different herbs. So sometimes we have to cycle through 2 or 3 different combinations to find out what really works best for you. But I think just having that awareness that if you've tried, one set of herbs, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh, I tried herbs, they didn't work. It just may not have been the right combination for you.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that there are plenty of choices, and it's the herbs give us so much more range in helping people find a solution that works for them.
Yeah, I also want to hear your thoughts on, how important should people be thinking about their gut microbiome in this whole process of getting well?
That's a lot of people that have come to me over the years, that is a pretty significant issue, because so many people have been on antibiotics, or just when we look at gut function, the problem is stress as much as diet in a lot of cases. So when our body is stressed, when our cells are stressed, when we're mentally stressed, we activate our fight or flight response, and we just hold that in place. And what that does is it slows gut motility. So when you slow motility, everything gets backed up into the stomach and the esophagus. So you start getting reflux, you can get ulcers, other kinds of stomach problems. Things slow down in the intestinal tract, in the small bowel. And when you slow things down, that food doesn't move. Well, there are bacteria all along that line, even in the small bowel, and those bacteria start growing. They have more time to grow. One of the reasons we need to keep things moving is because bacteria are always growing, and we've got to move that on out. So people get small bacterial intestinal overgrowth, SIBO, and so that it's that. So working on that component, I think, is really important. Calming that fight or flight response actually helps gut, and then getting people on a diet that actually feeds the kind of flora that you want. High in vegetables, low in processed foods, low in processed carbohydrates, good protein sources. I think that's really important. But the herbs do a fantastic job of suppressing pathogens, but not disrupting normal flora in the gut. So just taking the herbal products can be important. Protective products like cypre elm, or sometimes I use Sangre de Grotto in capsules, which protects the gut and the stomach especially. So there are a lot of things that you can do just to restore that normal gut balance and normal gut activity. But the big thing is just restoring motility does wonders, because if you let bacteria grow, they're going to wreak havoc. Even normal flora, healthy bacteria are going to start causing issues to the gut lining and cause leaky gut.
Well, your latest book, I'll hold this up here for those who are watching the video, The Cellular Wellness Solution. What I love about this book is you've really gone into a deep dive on the power of herbs and how they, like you said, how they affect cellular integrity. And again, this is not really a Lyme book. I mean, this is a chronic inflammation resource on how you can use your daily herbs in your cooking, how you can use other herbs therapeutically. You talk about the safety of it, the science behind why these plants are beneficial. So I think it's just a fantastic guide for people who really want to learn more about how to use herbs and plants in your cooking and your life to get better health. Are there other things in this book that people should know about that I didn't mention?
Well, yeah, thank you. It was put a lot of work into that book. That was a
I can
3 year
tell.
effort to get that thing out there. It's really like 4 books at once. People pull it out and it's this big, thick thing, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
But the first book, the first quarter of it is really about that concept of health at the cellular level. The second is really a primer on herbal medicine of just what a layperson really needs to know. The third is all the lifestyle modifications. What are your dietary and detox and other guidelines? How do we decrease that sympathetic overactivity? And then the final is taking those principles and applying it to specific problems, like a range of problems. Not, I didn't really write this book for Lyme disease specifically. So it's more like, how do you manage gut issues? How do you manage various kinds of health problems? So we covered a lot of bases with the book.
Well, we'll definitely put the link in the show notes for people to check it out. Again, I was looking through it. It's just a great resource. You put a lot of great information. I appreciate having written my own book. I know how much work goes into all this, and this is a lot of work. And I think people are
Well,
going to
thank you.
appreciate it once they read it.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
always great to talk to a colleague, fellow Lyme warrior who's, overcome their own illness and had their own journey. And hopefully, again, this is inspiring to people to know that, you're not sentenced with this diagnosis. There's a lot of things you can do to help overcome Lyme and these chronic infections.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Take care.